On today's show, to quote Cavs head coach Kenny Atkinson, the Cavs played a stinker against the Atlanta Hawks on Wednesday night. The defense might be a real problem for this team. Plus, I do want to talk about Evan Mobley's involvement in the fourth quarter. We've got all that and more on a Thanksgiving edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like 92.3 The Fan, my new Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and be a friend, tell a friend about the Locked On Cavs podcast. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure they're subscribed as well. Also, if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And of course, today's show is sponsored by FanDuel. You can start off the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. So the Cavs dropped this one on Wednesday night to the Atlanta Hawks, 135-124. I thought that this was absolutely the worst performance that the Cavs have had all season long. I thought that their energy, they came out of the gates, which is weird, I guess, about this game. Like, they came out of the gates really strong. They were up, I think it was 30-11. They were up by 19 points in the first quarter, and they looked really good early on. I'm like, okay, this is just going to be another one of those games where the Cavs overmatched their opponent and they cruise to another win, and there's nothing to complain about, right? Like, that is what I thought we were going to have from this team. And then it turns out the exact opposite happened, where so the Cavs started off the game on a 27-8 run, and then Atlanta finishes the first quarter on a 27-8 run. So it's tied at 35 after the first quarter because the Cavs fell apart defensively and they went a little cold on offense. Now, the cold stuff on offense is going to happen. I didn't necessarily think that they played a poor game on that side of the floor. I thought that their process was pretty solid. I thought they got some good looks, and they just didn't cash in on some of those. And over the course of a long season, that's going to happen at times. I don't think there's anything really to be concerned about on that end of the floor. But the defensive side of things, I think, is a little bit of a different story, because now the Cavs have not been a great defensive team for the majority of the season. They started off really strong. Like, the first handful of games, they were really, really good defensively. And then the calendar flipped from October to November, and they still have one game left in November on Friday against these very same Atlanta Hawks. So maybe it will improve. But in the month of November, and there are still games going on in the NBA as I record this, so this is a little, it can change a little bit. But for the month of November, the Cavs are 20th in defensive rating in the NBA. That was on full display on Wednesday night. The Hawks were yet another example of a team that came into a game against Cleveland that, you know, they're not, no one's going to confuse Atlanta with the Golden State Warriors that, you know, was winning titles as just a three-point shooting juggernaut. But the Hawks came in, and what did they do? They had one of their best nights of the season shooting three-pointers. You know, they came into this game, Atlanta did, 21st in three-point shooting percentage, shooting just under 35%. What'd they do? They shot 47% from three. That's become a common theme for Cavs opponents. So far this year, the Cavs have played 19 games. They're 17-2. There's a lot of really, really good stuff about this team. And I do plan on talking about some of the really good stuff about this team coming up in a little bit, but I do need to focus on the defense because that is the pertinent issue. And it's one that if does not get corrected, and I believe it can get corrected, and I think there's reasons that I'll explain in a bit why to be optimistic about that unit. But the Cavs have played 19 games. In 9 of those games, their opponent has shot 38% or better from three-point range. That's not a great number. Like, right now, 38%, if just a team shot 38% from three, they would rank 7th in the NBA. So Cavs opponents, for the most part, have been able to be, just on any given night, a top 10, top 5 unit in three-point shooting. They entered tonight against Atlanta, 28th in three-point defense. The only two teams worse than them, Atlanta was one of them. Atlanta came into this game dead last in three-point shooting, and the Cavs just didn't have a great night shooting the basketball, and that happens. I don't think the Hawks necessarily played good defense against them or anything like that, but it's something that is concerning. The Cavs are not a top 10 defense in basketball. They had a good first few games, and that is kind of keeping them up a little bit. But really, go back to that game against Orlando. That's the last time you could consider this statistically a really good defensive team, because since then, they've slipped quite a bit. Now, the reasons for slippage, I think, are worth discussing. This is a team that is trying some different things defensively. They're doing a lot of the things that they previously did over the past couple of years, but they are trying some new things, right? Like Kenny Atkinson mentioned after the game that they're playing the second most zone defense in basketball, which is not something that we've been accustomed to seeing from them in the previous few years. They haven't been a team that's played a ton of zone, really not since Evan Mobley's rookie year. Like, you remember that zone they put out when Mobley was a rookie where he would be at the top of it, and that's why everyone wanted to compare him to Kevin Garnett, which was fine. But they've not played a ton of zone since. And this year they're playing more of it. They're not playing a majority zone. Like, the majority of their defense is still man-to-man, but they're sprinkling zone in at a higher rate. Because they've played so many games and they have had a few days off lately. But because they had that stretch of 17 games in 29 days, they haven't had the opportunity to practice a lot of the things that they're doing. Certainly not at a high intensity. Like, you can have shoot around and stuff like that, but that's a low intensity workout for the most part. You walk through things and shoot around. You're not trying to do things that work up a full sweat. So because of that, because they haven't been able to practice those things, I think it's fair to give them a little bit of a pass, not excusing what's going on defensively entirely, certainly not what the issue was on Wednesday night against Atlanta, because I didn't think they were the more physical team against the Hawks. I thought Atlanta just had way more energy than the Cavs did. Like, I thought the Cavs came out with a lot of energy, and that's why I was impressed with the start they had, not just because they were hitting shots on offense, but because they had energy on both ends of the floor. And they got the Hawks called a timeout, and then it just seemed like the two teams flipped energy after that for the rest of the game. The Cavs were not the more energetic team. And I think a staple of this stretch of basketball for the Cavs before tonight, it felt like every 50-50 ball wasn't a 50-50 ball. It felt like it was maybe a 60-40 ball or a 70-30 ball in the Cavs' favor, right? Like, they would come up with more loose balls. They would make the hustle plays. They would do the little things. It felt like early in the season, there would be a significant play that if you're watching, you could pick out and say, okay, that's a really small play, and it flipped the game in the Cavs' favor. And they've consistently done that. And tonight, it felt like Atlanta had all those plays. Like, every time there was a loose ball, it felt like Atlanta came up with it. Every time the ball could bounce one way or another, it felt like it went Atlanta's way. And that's going to happen over the course of this season. That's why I don't think this loss in specifically is anything worth sounding any alarms over. And also, they're 17-2. Like, one loss on a Wednesday night in November is not a game to ever panic about when a team is as good as the Cavs are. But I do think that we have to look at this basketball team through a championship lens, right? Like, we shouldn't be comparing them to middle of the pack NBA teams. We shouldn't necessarily be comparing them to anyone. We should be saying on a nightly basis, like, was what they did on that night improving their chances of winning a championship? Because that's what the goal for this team is. I'm not saying it's failure if they don't win the title, but the goal is to win a title. And I do think that there are lessons that can be taken away from this game against the Hawks. Like, defensively, I think that this is a team that knows they need to be better on this end. But I also think it's a team that, because they have had so much defensive success in the previous couple of seasons, that they feel as if they can almost flip a switch and put their minds to it and start to compete and be a better defensive team whenever they want to. And I'm not sure that is entirely the case, But I also do think that there are some really easy things that they can do that will help them become maybe not the defensive team we're used to, but definitely not a bottom third of the NBA defensive team, which is what they've been in the month of November. So what are those things? How can they improve on defense? Let's talk through that a little bit next, right here on today's Locked On Cavs. Today's episode of Locked On Cavs is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is, of course, America's #1 sportsbook. There's so much to like at FanDuel, including the fact that if you're a new customer right now, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Now, today, Thursday, Thanksgiving, there's no NBA games on, but there's a lot of football you can bet on. Maybe you like the Dallas Cowboys. They're coming off a big win over the Washington Commanders last week. Maybe they're going to win. Maybe you think the Green Bay Packers are going to beat the Miami Dolphins Thursday Night Football, or maybe you're a believer in the Detroit Lions and Dan Campbell as they look to get a Thanksgiving Day win. I don't know what you think is going to happen on Thanksgiving. I don't know what's going to happen on Thanksgiving, but if you think you know what's going to happen, if you think that you've got winners, maybe filling out a parlay on FanDuel is the way to spend your turkey day. So if you're a new customer on FanDuel, if you win your first $5 bet, get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Pretty good deal. It's a lot to be thankful for on Thanksgiving. If you win that first $5 bet, it's $150 in bonus bets to be thankful for. So if you're a new customer, visit FanDuel.com today. That's FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started, like I said, with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and be a friend. Tell a friend about the Locked On Cavs podcast. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure they're subscribed. I'm certainly thankful for everyone out there that makes this their first listen every single day. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I am sitting here in the press conference room for the visiting team. Got some Thanksgiving travel stuff going on, so it was just easier for me to record this right after the game in the arena rather than going home and doing it. So that's why my backdrop looks a little bit different, looks a little bland today. There's a TV behind me and a wall behind me. I will be back with my normal setup for this weekend, but for Thanksgiving, I got some travel stuff going on. So this was just the easiest thing for me to do. So the Cavs defense, like I said, has been an issue. What is going to fix it? Because this is something that there are solutions to. They're not a bad defense the entire time. And I do think that the biggest issue for them against Atlanta was physicality. We've seen the Cavs defense be at its worst when they're not the more physical team that night. They do have to be a team that can be more physical. And I think that the officiating may have played a part in that for the Cavs tonight. Like there was the one play where Donovan Mitchell implored Kenny Atkinson to challenge a call. From my view and the replays I saw, it didn't look like Donovan touched. I don't remember who it was on Atlanta, but it didn't look like Donovan touched him. And they did not overturn the call, which led me to believe that the NBA replay system is just broken. Like if that's a foul, everything's a foul. The Cavs got called for 2 technicals, which might be the first time this season. It definitely has not happened more than once, but it might be the first time this season where they've had 2 different guys get called for technicals. Darius Garland got one, Kenny Atkinson got one. So I think that the officiating got to them a little bit. I think that got them out of the physicality that they want to play with, but their switches weren't crisp enough. They weren't being physical enough at the point of attack. And I think that those are some things that allowed Atlanta to get into the painted area and then spray out for open 3-pointers. And that's why the Hawks were able to shoot as well as they were from beyond the arc. And that's been something that has been an issue. Like if you look at the games where the Cavs have struggled defending the 3-pointer this year, it's not because, sometimes it is guys just hit shots. Like that's going to happen. There are going to be games where the Cavs play great defense and a team is just red hot from beyond the arc and there's nothing you can do. And nights like that happen and you kind of have to recognize it and move on. I didn't see tonight as one of those nights though. Like I thought that this was more of a defensive issue because it feels like Atlanta had a lot of really, really clean, good looks. I think that one of the things the Cavs are doing, because guys are getting into the paint, and I have to go back and I have to watch a little bit more of this to be positive, but this is the inkling that I have. I think that with how often opponents are getting into the paint, the Cavs' help defense has suffered. They've got Jarrett Allen. They've got Evan Mobley. Those are two of the best rim defenders in basketball. Evan Mobley is just one of the best defenders, period, in the sport. I think that those guys, I think that there are defenders elsewhere that are helping off of their guy to help those guys. Now, that is essentially called helping the helper, where, like, for instance, there was one three-pointer made in the second half tonight where Isaac Okoro's guy hit a three, and Isaac Okoro's guy was open, might have been Jalen Johnson, because Isaac Okoro was worried about somebody getting in the paint as if he needed to help Jarrett Allen in the paint. Like, Isaac was a little too tight to the key, so it created enough room for once the ball did get close to the paint, he was then, I think it was Trae Young, was then able to throw the ball out to the left corner, and then bang, Atlanta knocks down another three. I think there are too many instances like that where they're just kind of overhelping with the helper. That is something that can get cleaned up. That is something that I don't think is that difficult of a fix. I think it's something that takes discipline. And I think if they start to do that, they might suffer a little bit inside. But I think they will be able to survive that because of how good Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley are at the rim. And then if they stop doing that as frequently or stop doing that as much, I think that the way they defend the three, particularly in the corners, will go up because their closeouts will be a little bit tighter because guys won't have as much space and guys are still going to hit shots, right? Like, these are NBA players we're talking about. They're really, really good shooters. But I think that that number will start to creep down. Like, that's just one fix. I think another fix too is just going to be more time because they are playing different things. And I thought Donovan Mitchell had a really good quote about this after the game in the locker room, where he mentioned that they haven't had a ton of practice time, and he's right. Because of that, and a lot of the stuff they do defensively is similar to what they had done under JV Bickerstaff, but there are new things, like they're running more zone, as I mentioned. They're, in some senses, Donovan said, practicing these things in games, because the goal for this team is to win a championship. And to win a championship, you have to win 16 games in the postseason. You have to win 4 rounds in the postseason. You're not going to be able to get by. I don't care who you are. You're not going to be able to get by in the postseason by playing the same defense every single night against every single team. There are certain matchups that are going to dictate that things have to be played certain ways. And right now, especially with the Cavs having built up such a cushion, like it's them and then it's Boston and then there's a pretty big gap. Like, it would be kind of a disaster if the Cavs don't finish with a top 2 seed in the East. I don't know that they're going to finish number 1, but they should not finish below 2. So because of that, they have built in the ability they can practice these things in the game, and they can work on these things in games. Now, some nights, on nights when you don't have a good shooting night and you're not great defensively, it's going to result in a loss. But because of that cushion they've built up, they can't afford it. Now, they can't afford to do it all the time, but they can't afford it. I think we're seeing that with the zone defense. There are some nights where it looks really good, and there are some nights where they can't figure out how to stop the other team. Tonight was certainly not the former. It was absolutely the latter, where they have gone into zone because they struggled to stop Atlanta. And man, like Trae Young, he didn't necessarily have a great night scoring the basketball, but he had 20 plus assists. Like, he was awesome in that area. So I think that is something that we will see get better as time goes on, as this team gets better and better and better at these things because they have more reps in game. And yes, having more practice time with this stuff before doing it in the game would be beneficial, but that hasn't been an option for this team. I think it'll be more of an option moving forward because they're going to start to be able to have some practice time. They're not playing every other day for a month the way they did to open up the season. So I do think that'll change a little bit, but it also is going to matter that they have these reps doing these things, and they've kind of learned through, like, they've mentioned being able to learn through wins and victories. And when you win your first 15 games of the year, that's a really good thing. But sometimes it's always more painful to learn through a loss, but sometimes it can be easier to learn through a loss because it does have that pain. It does have that, okay, we kind of got our butts kicked. What do we have to do? How do we respond? How do we get better? And they can look at the defensive end of the floor. They can look at the zone defense they're playing. They can look at the lack of physicality. They can look at the poor switches that they had against Atlanta and fix those things because of how poorly they played and the taste that it leaves in their mouth. Like that is the one thing that I do look at and say, okay, by practicing this now, they're going to be better when it matters. And yes, it's going to lead to a frustrating night. Like Wednesday was a frustrating night for the Cavs. And this is not the last time they're going to have a night like this. They will lose another game like this season. I don't think they're going to lose a ton of them, but they will lose another game like this year. Every team in the league has stinkers. Wednesday night was absolutely a real stinky one for the Cavs. But they can learn from it. They absolutely can learn from it. There is a positive that I want to take away. I don't want to send you guys off on Thanksgiving just talking about the things that went wrong for the Cavs against Atlanta on Wednesday night. So I do want to talk about the thing that was, I thought, the most encouraging from this game for the Cavs. So we'll do that next right here on today's edition of Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Skylight Frames. So I've been a big fan of Skylight for a while, and this is not part of the script. This is, I got my mom a Skylight frame a few years ago. I don't remember if it was for Christmas or for her birthday or something else, but my sister and I got her a frame. And what Skylight frames are is it's a picture frame. But instead of putting a picture in there that stays forever and you look at the same picture every single day, what you can do is you can send pictures to the picture frame and they'll rotate. And you will see basically a slideshow of photos that you care about in the Skylight frame. I've got one, like I said, I bought one for my mom a couple of years ago. She absolutely loves it. It makes a great gift. Holiday season is arriving. It truly does make a great gift. It's something that my mom loves. She loves seeing the notification pop up on it and say, you have new photos that have arrived. We've given out the email address for the frame to family, friends, and new photos pop up in there every single day. And it's just kind of a little reminder that there are people out there thinking about you, that they want you to know what they're up to and stuff like that. It's a really, really cool thing. You can send photos of your pets, family photos, whatever you want can go on that picture frame. So like if you're struggling to come up with a gift idea for a loved one, this I think might be a really, really good idea. Setup is super easy, takes less than 60 seconds. Like I said, my mom has one. I have one. It's really, really awesome. You can invite friends, family, anyone you want to share photos through the Skylight app or the email address, like I mentioned. It's touchscreen. You can swipe through photos. Like if there's one, maybe I've seen that one a little bit much. I want to see what's next. You just swipe over to the next one. It's got some really cool features. And right now is a special limited time offer for our listeners here. Get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NBA. That's skylightframe.com/NBA. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you're looking for more written Cavs content, check out my new Substack, The Inside Shot. I am running a Cyber Weekend sale, 15% off all subscriptions. So check that out. A link is in the episode description. If you're looking for, written stories about maybe how the Cavs can improve defensively, go just a little bit more in depth and have some video examples that I can't necessarily put into a podcast, that is the place to check that out. So the thing that I thought went best for the Cavs on Wednesday night against the Hawks was the play of Evan Mobley. I thought that there were stretches of this game where Evan Mobley was without question the best player. I know Donovan Mitchell had 30 points, but I thought Evan was the best player the Cavs had. It kind of snuck up on me, but he almost had a 5-by-5 in this game. He had 22 points, 13 boards, 5 assists, 5 steals, and 3 blocks. Like he was 2 blocks away from a 5-by-5. For all the talk that Trae Young's going to get for having, 20 points and 22 assists, and that is just a bonkers box score. Evan Mobley he was really, really awesome. I actually thought the turning point in this game for Atlanta was the Cavs pulled Evan Mobley out for like a minute in the fourth quarter. There was like 8 minutes left, maybe 8:30, and he went back with, I think, 7:06 remaining in regulation. The Cavs went from up 4 to a tie game in that minute. And that was really the start of Atlanta's run that put the game away, is when Evan Mobley went to the bench. He was really, really good. I think he's just I'm really encouraged about the start that Evan Mobley's having. And one of the things Donovan Mitchell keeps saying is that encourages him most about Mobley is that this is the worst the Cavs think Mobley's going to be. They really view him as somebody that's getting better every single day. And if this is who he is at the start of this season, because it's still early in the season, we're not even 20 games in yet. But if this is who Mobley is going to be, if he's going to keep getting better, the Cavs are going to get so much better. I think that there's still a lot of room for growth from Evan, but I have been really encouraged with what I've seen him do offensively. One of the things that stands out to me about Evan right now is how often he's getting to the free throw line. Like, he took 10 free throw attempts on Wednesday night against Atlanta, and that's just not something that has really been a big enough part of his game before. Like, last year, he had 2 games where he took 10 or more free throw attempts. Just 2. For somebody as good as he is, Mobley should be getting the line much, much more than he is. So getting the line 10 times, I thought, was a great sign. That's something we need to see more of. That was the second time that's happened for him this year. So 2 times in 19 games, that's a much better percentage than 2 times in the 55 or however many games he played last season. I think that is really an area we've seen him improve. The pump fake has gotten better, but it's not just that he's baiting guys into fouls. It's that he's going up strong and guys are having to like drag him down by the arms. And that's how he's getting to the free throw line. So I thought Evan Mobley was a real bright spot for the Cavs. I think he's been a bright spot all year long. And that is something that I think Cavs fans should certainly be thankful for, because his development is really he's starting to look like an all-star. And I think that if the Cavs continue, Wednesday night notwithstanding, but if they continue to play the level of basketball they've been playing, I do think the Cavs will get 3 All-Stars, and I think Evan Mobley will be one of them. So, like I said earlier, thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope it's a great holiday. I'm very, truly, I'm thankful for you guys. I've loved getting to do this show. Like, it has been, for the 4 or 5 months, however long it's been an absolute blast talking Cavs basketball with you guys every single day. So truly, I'm thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for everyone that makes this their first listen every day, no matter how you do it, whether it's via podcast, YouTube, whatever. I'm very thankful for you, truly. So have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. I will have a mailbag episode going up on Friday morning, so be on the lookout for that. Full disclosure, I'm recording that very early Thursday. So if something happens, and I would not expect anything to happen, but if something happens on Thursday, it won't be addressed until after the Cavs play the Hawks in an NBA Cup game Friday afternoon in Atlanta. I'm planning on having an episode like right after that game. So hopefully I will have an episode up for you guys very early Friday evening after the Cavs maybe get an NBA Cup win over the Atlanta Hawks, but we will have to see. So like I said, thanks for making Locked On Cavs your first listen. Thanks for riding with me every day. Find the show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I'll talk to you tomorrow.